My name is Carissa Kranz. I'm the founder and CEO of BeVeg International. I'm also a vegan from birth and a lawyer by trade. And BeVeg is the world's first and only ISO accredited vegan certification, trademark, and scheme, making us the most reliable and credible benchmark for vegan label claims to achieve in the global marketplace today. BeVeg has global trademark protection and has recognition internationally across over 110 countries where we're currently represented. So I'm sure many of you that are attending today are aware that vegan label claims are on the rise, and you are seeing the demand in the marketplace. Right now, vegan claims are like the Wild West. Anyone can claim vegan, and the question is, what does that mean and by what standard? And while generally everyone has an idea of what vegan should mean, the reality is consumer protection laws are in place to protect the consumer, and vegan really means free from animal contaminants and no animal testing. So while people are using the vegan claim freely, they really aren't able to enforce and warrant that the claim actually has integrity. A lot of the statistics say, according to this one, more than 70% of consumers make their purchasing decision based on the label, and 96% of people are more likely to buy a product that is clearly marked vegan, whether they're vegan or not. Actually, in fact, the statistics also show that 80% of the consumers that are purchasing vegan products are not vegan at all in terms of how they identify with themselves. They're just more plant-based, leaning into the plant-based lifestyle, which I think also brings me to an important point of plant-based versus vegan. All vegan claims are plant-based, but not all plant-based claims are vegan. Plant-based means based mostly in plants. It means that it doesn't mean it's cruelty-free, and it doesn't mean that the supply chain is kept accountable, and it doesn't mean that cross-contamination measures are in place. It just means for the flexitarian and those leaning into the plant-based lifestyle that something is plant-based. But vegan means it is plant-based. It means that it's cruelty-free, and it means that it's been audited and checked, and that it is truly free from animal contaminants, because the BeVeg technical standard has required audits in place. And if the audits show any risk assessed or through vulnerability assessments, then there will also be a lab test, or if some supplier in the supply chain can't be verified, that supplier it would have to sign a vegan declaration, and if that can't be verified, then the final product may have to be sent off for testing as well. So like I said, vegan claims are like the Wild West unless you're following the BeVeg technical standard, which is a comprehensive and robust standard and the first one of its kind. Today, vegan is not defined or recognized under existing laws as the word itself. The BeVeg technical standard, which is accredited in accordance with ISO 17065 for vegan products and services, and also recognized in accordance with 17067 as a conformity assessment program, is the first technical standard of its kind to actually define vegan globally in a way that can be applicable and enforced in a meaningful way that would keep the integrity for consumer protection laws and consumer expectations with claims. Right now, the current system of laws do not require rigorous disclosures from manufacturers about ingredients and techniques used in the creation of their products, and trade secrets are protected to the detriment of consumer transparency. So in the United States, for example, while this is a global problem, I'm going to talk about the United States and the FDA and the USDA. There is this thing called incidental additives, which do not need to be listed on labels. And that is food substances or other substances that are transferred from, in the manufacturing process, but or could be ingredients of other ingredients that are found at, quote, insignificant levels. They don't have to be disclosed. They don't even have to be warranted. So with the BeVeg scheme, one thing that is required during the audit and before the audit is that the standard operating procedures or HACCP plans or GMPs are updated to contemplate the BeVeg technical standard and scope to show a senior level commitment to vegan measures in place at the factory level. And you might say, well, why is that important? It's important in a lot of ways. Vegan is not only about being free from animal contaminants for the animal lover, it's also about being mainstream. What do I mean by that? So 20% of the world is allergic to lactose. That's a dairy derivative. So if a consumer is purchasing a product that is in reliance on a vegan claim that may have been made at a facility with shared machinery and contaminated, then they are wrongly relying on a vegan claim that they cannot trust. The BeVeg technical standard has cleaning mechanisms in place, allergen controls in place, traceability in place, label checks, segregation, separation, vulnerability assessments, et cetera, like any other food safety or GFSI level standard. Another problem with the FDA, they allowed food manufacturers to round down to 0 for any ingredient that accounts for less than 0.5 grams per serving. So while a product may claim to be gluten-free, alcohol-free, sugar-free, or vegan-free, or animal-free, it can legally contain up to 0.5 grams per serving, and that really does add up. So where BeVeg really is robust is we look at not only the paperwork process of ingredient verification and supply chain accountability, but then we go into the factories, and all products certified must come out of either a certified BeVeg facility or a registered facility that's cooperating in the audit process, because we want to make sure that the standard operating procedures are updated so we can enforce the mechanisms and the principles of the standard to warrant what the consumer would expect when they see a vegan claim. When it comes to alcohol and wine, the Tobacco and Trade Bureau is even worse. Alcoholic beverage makers are not required to list ingredients or include nutritional information on their labels. When you look at an alcoholic beverage, most of the time all you see is the alcohol content and the government warnings. But nothing about the process of what goes into wine, beer, and liqueur is really ever disclosed. So while there's up to 67 ingredients that could be used in your wine, beer, or liqueur, which people don't realize all those 67 additives, but those are all named by the Tobacco and Trade Bureau. While there's those 67 additives that could be used, there's also the process of making the wine, finding the wine, distilling the beer, making the liqueur, which often uses isinglass, which is fish bladder, gelatin, which is cow's elbows and knees and horse hooves, or crustacean shells of fish, which is animal bones, or other animal body parts to make the final product. At BeVeg, we require the transparency of process and of ingredients to ensure that it truly is vegan. So that means all products could have trace animal parts in the final product, and by law, manufacturers do not have to disclose this information at this time. But the reality is consumer protection laws do require truth and transparency in labeling so the consumer is not misled and confused in their purchasing decisions. And this is also important for the brand owner and the retail chains and the private label brand user, etc., because nobody wants to have liability for making a claim that was then trusted for the wrong reasons, because there can be ramifications. So when you have the vegan certification by BeVeg, where you did your due diligence by being audited and disclosing the information, then you have a true vegan claim that you can rely on, proving that you did your part, that you were not negligent if there's any contamination found in the supply chain later on, because there were third-party audits and because there's checks and balances. So while the manufacturer and the brand owner may be audited. The reality is the certification body that's auditing you is also audited. And BeVeg, as the standard owner, is also audited by our accreditation body. And our accreditation body is also audited by APAC or other international accreditation forums. So it's really important to understand that we really do bring transparency not only to your vegan claim, but to the entire process of vegan certification. So a little bit about BeVeg. BeVeg is a technical vegan standard that's ISO accredited that was written by attorneys and industry experts. Why attorneys? Because we understand global consumer protection laws, we understand the deficiency, and we seek to raise the standard for consumer transparency and continue to manage the technical standard so it can be meaningful and protected under the law. We are the only law firm issued vegan symbol in the world. We're the only ISO accredited vegan trademark in the world, and BeVeg to date has more global trademark protection than any other vegan label out there. The other vegan labels out there are just trademarks. They're not technical standards. They're more like rent-a-stamp. It's more like going and disclosing paperwork. There's no audits. There's no warranting that the information is actually accurate. There's no independent audits by third-party auditing bodies, and they do not audit and certify manufacturing facilities and sites. And that's what's key with BeVeg. We certify the sites and the facilities. So it's a lot easier for the products that either are co-packing clients, private label owners, or if it's vertical integration and the manufacturing facility also owns the products out of it, it makes it a lot easier for the final product to gain the rights to use the logo because the factory is compliant in their standard operating procedures. A little bit more of the same, that we're, registered trademark. We're trying to prevent the consumer from having to read the small print or guess or Google what certain ingredients might mean or what process may have been used, because trademark laws and trade secret laws are protecting the brand owner and the manufacturing facility from having to disclose that. So, we understand that. We'll sign NDAs. We understand that a lot of the times you don't want to disclose your trade secrets, and that's totally fine. We're not in the business of disclosing your trade secrets, but we do require you be forthcoming with us with those trade secrets so we can give that final symbol to the consumer that they can trust, knowing that you worked in transparency of process with BeVeg and your certification body. So right now we are represented in more than 110 countries. We're accredited internationally. Our vegan standard encompasses a wide scope. We do food, beverages, household items, cosmetics, fashion, textiles, liquor, and other vegan businesses. The benefit of moving forward with an audit right now with a certification body that you're already working with is that you can roll up your audit, and the BeVeg certified audit can complete during your next GFSI GMP audit, which means minimal factory disruption and a better cost, because while we can go through the paperwork now and prepare you for your audit, you can gain your certification as an add-on audit to your existing audits that you're already undergoing with your cooperating auditing firm. So what do we require? We require paperwork disclosure of ingredients and processes currently that goes above and beyond what's currently required in truth in labeling laws. We require vegan declarations to ensure no animal products are used and no animal testing on the final BeVeg certified product. We require that facilities update their standard operating procedures to show a commitment to BeVeg. We require on-site audits of facilities to ensure that mechanisms are in place to protect vegan integrity, like segregation, separation, color coding, separate equipment, cleaning mechanisms, label checks, purchasing controls, allergen controls, vulnerability assessments. Occasionally, lab testing might be required, depends on what is risk assessed during the paperwork audit process or the on-site audit process. and we require certification of the manufacturing facility and applied for vegan brands, because products must come out of a certified, registered, cooperating BeVeg facility. We probably don't have to convince you on the demand because you're already here today listening, but there's no denying the increasing demand for vegan products. Just by example, there are 500 million vegetarians worldwide. About 23 million people and households in the US alone follow a vegetarian diet. And every year, veganism first in 2014 increased by 500%, and then in I think 2020 it increased by 1,500%. See down here, it's the #1 search term on Google, beating Pepsi and Coca-Cola. And it keeps growing. Going meat-free is one of the top trends according to New York Magazine. Almost 22 billion global sales of vegan alternatives are predicted in the next 6 years. The global market of ethically packaged foods is expected to grow at 11%. You know, in the next, that was between 2016 and 2020, and it's continuing that trend. And it's almost $1 trillion market when it comes to ethically packaged labeled foods. 3 out of 4 people surveyed say that they would consume more plant-based foods for the benefits. So even though they're not vegan, they're looking for those labels. If they see the labels, they're more inclined to purchase it. 60% of people are in the US are limiting their meat consumption. 96% of people say they're more likely to buy a product that is clearly marked as vegan, and notably 80% of those are not vegan identified consumers. They're just leaning into that lifestyle. The global market for vegan cosmetics is projected to reach about 21 billion by 2025. The vegan food market is 31.4 billion projected by 2026. $4 billion in annual sales on vegan milk and vegan dairy globally. This is growing 75% a year. And 21 billion is the projected market for vegan cosmetics. Okay, so other things BeVeg is doing. We have a phone app. BeVeg has the world's most comprehensive vegan alcohol database at this time and is consistently named a top 5 vegan app. Right now we have about 60,000 alcoholic beverages cataloged in there where the consumer can shop confidently and have informed purchasing decisions to know whether or not their BeVeg drink is actually BeVeg, and will allow them to basically just make those informed purchasing decisions when they're out. It's a service to the consumer. It's a free app, and we do plan to expand the app to include also food and other sectors in time. Here's an example of some of our certified brands. We've been in Forbes, we've been in Vegetarian Resource Group, Veg Out, Veg News, Social Life Magazine, Jane Unchained News Network, which is a network that has that's for the animals and has live streaming. Social Life Magazine. We've been in many international magazines, metropolitan magazines. We've been on the mainstream news channels. We've been in Forbes. Christy Brinkley is one of our celebrity brands. This is her vegan wine. Kip Anderson has his celebrity brand of a vegan powder, Glow. He is a well-known celebrity documentary who did a lot of the vegan documentaries that people know, like What the Health is one of them. Here's some examples of our trademark on packaging. Unreal Deli, she's been on Shark Tank and with Mark Cuban, and is carried in grocery stores all over, and it's starting to be carried in fast food chains as well, like Veggie Grill and Quiznos Subs and Whole Foods and Happy Hummus. And here's our logo. This is the first vegan biscuit to ever make the market. This is Ozo by Planterra. This is a vegan range which is owned by JBS, which is the world's largest meat manufacturer. So while they're making, I think, $53 billion a year on their meat, the reality is they see where this is going, and they've invested in a vegan range and a vegan line and a vegan factory, and they chose the BeVeg global trademark to stand by their commitment to their vegan standards for their vegan range. So the certification process is you apply online, you fill out the necessary parts of the application. Your auditing body can help you with the forms. Once the paperwork process is returned and the cost of certification is accepted, then the audit will be scheduled. Before the audit is scheduled, you should update your standard operating procedures so the time spent on audit day is quicker. And then there's the certification and the contracts and the logo use approval. And I'm sure a lot of you are asking, what's the cost of certification? The cost is, it's very unique per each account. That's why it's important that you apply and fill out the paperwork properly, because the cost considers a multitude of factors, such as how many factories are being audited, where the factories are in the travel time, how many products are being considered in the certification, how many brands are being considered, because sometimes one brand could have lots of products. Does the factory do private labeling, or are you a co-packing client applying as a, for your own certification, but you don't own the facility, so we need to work with you and the facility? Or are you a manufacturing facility that doesn't have any of your own brands, but you wish to apply for certification for the facility so brands can come to you and more easily gain the rights to the BeVeg global trademark? So a lot of things are considered in costing and pricing, and that's why we need you to fill out the initial paperwork in order to get your custom quote. So that's pretty much it from my point, but I'm available to answer any questions. I'm sure that a question for one would be a benefit to all, so I will turn the floor back over, but remain available if anyone wants to ask a question.
Carissa, we just have a question.
Okay.
Will you share the presentation later?
You want a copy of it? That's no problem.
Okay. Thank you.
I think I said a lot of things, though, that weren't necessarily in there, like that are important. I think about the cost. I think that's important that people understand it really is tailored. It's not like we're being secretive here. We need to know all the factors to consider. And, I didn't put in there about plant-based being different than vegan and cruelty-free being different than vegan. I think a lot of people, they know about the Vegan Society label or the PETA label, or Vegan Action's another label, but these are labels by vegan activist organizations that don't do any audits. And the reality is, it's like fill out a form, pay $250 and go on your merry way. And there's no meaning in that. And that's actually, coming from a lawyer, negligent to even think that that would mean that that's a valid vegan claim. It means nothing. The only way, I think it's important, like what we're not sharing, but as a certification body that's been trained on our program, that we have a very comprehensive auditor checklist. It gets into GFSI measures, it gets into GMP practices, and it's uniform. So every certification body, every auditor around the world, and every company that goes through our process are going to go through the exact same process and checklist to ensure consistency and application of our integrity program.
So we have another question. It says BeVeg logo and certification is valid for all countries or all over the world.
Yes, the certification is valid globally. We have the international ISO accreditation, and we also have the global trademark protection. So we are, globally recognized, and it is applicable globally, which is great if you want to access new capital markets too. So if you're looking into export, can help increase your marketability that way.
And there's another one here. Is this acceptable by the all authorities?
I'm not sure what authorities they're referring.
All authorities.
Well, since we have the ISO accreditation, it's internationally accepted as the most robust and credible standard on the market to this date. There's no other ISO accredited vegan standard. So we're the first and only right now. So it would be accepted as the most credible vegan claim on the market by any authority looking to ISO, which is the International Standardization Organization. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And there's another one here. How many days it takes to finalize the audit process and all the progress?
Okay, that's a good question, and one we get a lot. So a lot of the time frame is dependent on the applicant. How quickly do they get us the materials and the vegan declarations back, and how quickly they can update their standard operating procedures. Once all of that paperwork is approved, an audit can almost be immediately scheduled. Or in the case that you're bundling an audit and rolling it up, your audit can happen on your next audit date. And depending on the risk assessment factors, it's possible that you can gain the certification and the audit, the on-site audit can be delayed till to your next audit. So if you just had an audit, for example, with your certification body like Maru, and let's say that you passed, if you submit the paperwork and update the standard operating procedures and the paperwork checks out, and we know that your standard operating procedures check out, you can go through the on-site audit the next year because they were just on your site anyway and have risk assessed it. So a lot of that is dependent on personal circumstances, but as long as you are organized and if you already are doing other audits anyway, a lot of your paperwork is probably already on file. So it's just having the auditor review your existing paperwork for vegan scope in accordance with our vegan checklist, and then asking you to do the other additional step of updating your SOPs so we can issue the certificates. So it could be quick or it could take time depending on how quickly everybody responds to the requirements.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, I'll add just something though. I think that, if there's manufacturing facilities listening today, I think it's very important for them to understand the value of the certification because it makes them more marketable to open up their facility to other co-packing clients, where the co-packing clients won't have to go through an additional audit to gain, an additional on-site audit necessarily to gain access to the global trademark. And also, if you're a manufacturing facility that does private labeling, it makes it a lot easier for your private labels to gain access to the trademark, because once you're a certified facilities and all your formulas are approved, the private labels for a very minimal fee and no additional work and no additional audit can gain access to the trademark on their product. And you can package our pricing into your pricing to them and pass it off to them as part of their private label package. So once you're a certified facility, it makes it a lot easier and cost effective for the products to gain the global trademark. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time and presentation, Carissa.
No problem. Thanks for having me anytime.